So thank you all for your attendance and coming along this morning, and welcome to this meeting of the Black Isle and East Ross Committee. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and thereafter archived for public access via the Highland Council's YouTube channel. So good morning, everyone. I suppose the first thing to do is to go over our apologies for absence this morning.
Thanks, Chair. I'll do a quick roll call with the apologies. Councillor Atkin.
Present.
You're here, thank you. Councillor Coghill.
Present.
Councillor Collier is not here yet. Councillor Dundas.
Present.
Thank you. I have apologies from Councillor Edmondson. Councillor Johnson, you're here. Councillor Loudon, I think, is here.
Present.
You're here, glad. Thanks, Derek. Councillor McCallum.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Ross.
Present.
And I have apologies from Councillor Smith. And I don't have any declarations of interest in advance. So.
Lovely, thank you. Does anybody have any declarations of interest that they need to make at the moment then? Are we all good?
I think as the owner of a 1/3 share in a single rented property, I think I'll have to make a declaration of interest in regard to the housing item, and will leave the meeting during that item.
Fantastic, thank you. And Councillor Atkin.
This is a kind of transparency statement. My partner is a private landlord of one property, but I usually mention that at the beginning of every housing property committee. It's nothing to do with me, obviously, but worth putting out there.
Thank you so much.
It's that I don't have to, and I know I don't exclude myself ever in the main council for housing items.
No problem at all. Okay, well, we'll move on then to item number 3, which is the fire area performance report. So everybody will have had that and had a chance to look over that. So can I ask Paul Young, who we've got with us today, would you like to talk to the report first, and then we'll have some questions?
Yep,
thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So if everyone has the report, you've had a look over it yourself, so I'll go over it and just say if there's any questions afterwards, then please let me know. So for a rough idea of the report, it mentions within it about our home fire safety visit work, and the implementation of a new system, which will be coming in next year. With the idea that we are able to get a greater information sharing going with the different partner agencies to try and share that information on any vulnerable people that either we find within their premises or vice versa, if they to try and get into these higher risk premises of giving that fire safety information is our goal. That's always where we're doing these things. It's more about quality rather than quantity, I think, in terms of carrying out these visits. So that's an idea of that, why it mentions that there. And we also talk about PDIRs, which is post-domestic incident responses. So of any incident that we attend, we will carry out a PDIR and offer a fire safety visit to the premise and potentially adjacent premises, depending on what the incident is and the severity of it. We've also been working in local engagement with academy pupils, which we have done previously, and it's an ongoing thing, towards the elimination of deliberate fire setting and nuisance calls within the area. It talks about the UFAS, so the unwanted fire alarm signals policy, which, as you'll notice from the report, certainly since its implementation in 2023, the numbers of these calls now they become challenged, and they're certainly driving down the amount of these, say, unwanted fire alarm signals that we attend, and it's proving to be a success, which obviously prevents that additional road risk to ourselves and others, and then also gives us additional time to do other things like the home fire safety visits that I've been talking about, and also extra additional training and such like. In terms of the performance report for the area, it shows that accidental dwelling fires were slightly above average, with 6 recorded, although within the area, although there was no fatalities or casualties from accidental dwelling fires. There was 28 deliberate fires in this reporting period, of which 6 were primary and 21 secondary fires. Again, slightly above the 3-year average. And there was 8 recorded non-domestic fires in this reporting period, which again is above average for the area. Special services. We have 18 road traffic collisions reported during this period, with 1 fatality and 11 non-fatal casualties as well within these incidents. There were 46 non-fire emergency related incidents in the reporting period, which is above average, and again shows a steady increase over the 3 years. I've discussed the UFAS policy, mentions it there that we attended 18 UFAS signals, and it remains lower over the past 3 years, but probably on par with quarter 3 and 4, which was 17, so very similar. So, but we're getting them down, but we will continue to work to try and reduce all these unwanted fire alarm signals that we attend. And also from the crews and the community action team within the area have carried out a total of excuse me, 150 home fire safety visits within this period to local within the area. That's the report part. There is some additional stuff on the end of the report to do with the availability of the crews. So obviously the stations that within the area that we're reporting on, so Ballantor and Cromarty, remain community response units, so we don't have they're not on our target system for availability, so we don't have availability of when they are available, but within Fortrose, Invergordon and Tain we do, and it remains in a good level. Certainly Fortrose has come on leaps and bounds. They're sitting just under 80% now, compared to where they were probably just over a year ago. They've come on massively. We've got quite a few additional staff in there, which is brilliant, and also more keen on joining, which is great. Invergordon, certainly the first appliance remains great, 99.97. So as near as always available for the crew there, and their second appliance is also very good at 84%. And then Tain as well is 82%, which remains good. And again, following recent retireals, there has been a recruitment drive there, and there is additional crew members now within Tain as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. It's always a very interesting report, the fire report, I feel. Before I open it up, I have a couple of things I want to ask on the report myself. Just for a point of clarity, in the graphs where it shows the various lines, whatnot, it always refers to Black Isle. I take it that's just a typo, is it? And it's actually referring to the whole area rather than just the Black Isle. Yeah.
So
I had thought that.
Asked a very similar question because I cover Black Isle, but not necessarily East or Ross in terms of my management area. I asked the where the report's produced and how it's worked out, and I was assured it's for these areas, so it's all in these.
Perfect. I did think it was maybe quite a long committee name to fit in a small space, so I thought it might have been that. The other thing I was going to say was I was going to completely agree with you on the response rate for Fortrose. It is a huge increase, but obviously it's still behind. So you're encouraged yourself that you've got more folk coming forward, are you?
So to give you an indication of how Fortrose works and where we're at with it. So the 9 staff that are currently there, certainly since I've come into this, there's currently 5 trainees which are within that 9. So there's 4 qualified and competent people within their role there. So as much as there is additional interest, it's about how you can formulate, have a safe model of having people working in. So as the trainees are going through their progression towards to becoming qualified and competent, that will allow us to take more on. But it's that process of getting that mix right to make sure that the training is of an appropriate level and that everyone is trained to a good high standard. When they're at that standard, we take more in. It's that continual process. But certainly I appreciate that the number is down, but it has massively come on in my time. We also use, and I'm sure we've discussed it before, but you'd be aware, the on-call support watch commander, who can attend different stations with lower availability to make sure that they're available on the run. In fact, I know because I've just come off the phone to them that they're actually in Fortrose today doing that very job. So that's an example of how we do it. But yes, we certainly will be recruiting. It's just it'll be at the right time and the right level for getting people.
Yeah, I was also going to congratulate you on the number of home fire safety visits. I know how important they are to some of the more vulnerable members of our community, especially some perhaps elderly people where there's maybe cognitive issues on the go. And is that something that's mostly undertaken by the community response units? And am I right in thinking that we're the only part of Scotland with the community response units?
Yes, yes. So Highlands is the only part of Scotland that has community response units. There is different terminology maybe in other areas, but the community response unit is unique to the Highlands. So the part of doing the home fire safety visits, I wasn't quite sure. So the community response unit, certainly everybody carries out the home fire safety visit, whether it's a community response unit or an on-call station, or they're also supported by the community action team, that's their job. So it's a mix of everybody and how we do it, and it's working as a team. It's the fire service, I suppose. So that's what it is. But yeah, it's about trying to get the right areas, the right target. So it's about that, people maybe with cognitive issues. So that higher risk group of somebody who will be potentially having a fire is can we get in that door? Can we offer guidance, advice, make sure they're smoke detectors, make sure they're working, what they need to do in the event of a fire, all that stuff. So
thank you very much. Right, if I can bring in Councillor Ross.
Okay, thanks very much for the report. Lots of good things in it. I'm obviously going to zone in on the seaboard. I see that the Ballantor CRU, we have no females in that section, so maybe we could do a little bit of advertising, because I think we used to have a female member of staff there. I recall not that long ago, but thank you. We got a new, well, not a new vehicle, we got a different vehicle, and it now has a pump on it, which I know that the guys are very grateful for. But I would really appreciate if the fire service would consider upgrading Ballantor in the light of all the industry that's coming our way and which is actually now with us. It just seems a little bit silly that we're still just a community response unit. I'll be harping on about that every time we have these meetings. So if you could put that forward, Paul, that would be really good. And the other thing is, I'm aware that we're now the retrofit of the houses in the scheme in Ballantor is underway. It may be a worthwhile exercise for the Ballantor unit then to do visits once that retrofit is done, just to remind people of fire safety. So that's maybe something well worth thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, so just to sort of touch on a few bits that you mentioned about, certainly about recruitment. you know, as much as looking at the figures, and I know you mentioned Ballantor in particular, but all these stations, and although even Tain and Invergordon have a good level of staffing, certainly compared to a lot of areas, very fortunate in the areas that we're looking at, they have a really good level of staffing. That we are still recruiting for all these areas, and it's an ongoing challenge, is the best way of putting that, I think, is trying to get the right people in from the local areas who have availability and who have the desire to do it. So it's something that we're continually trying to do, and yes, across the board, and certainly in terms of males and females as well. I believe in Tain, obviously just along the road from Ballantor, there's certainly that one female has just started within the unit, which it's before my time, but I'm led to believe that that's the first female that's joined that local unit in certainly about 30 years. So these are all positive steps going forward, and it is a continuous thing, the recruitment and the challenges, different challenges, even like I mentioned before, Fortrose as well. In terms of the Ballantor and their capability, because obviously we've mentioned about it being a TRU station and what they currently attend, and yes, I do know that they have a different appliance now, which has water pumping facilities, but the particular niche as to what these stations attend, which is generally wildfires and RTCs. As you'll be aware, I'm sure from previous meetings and from the guidance and that communication side of things, is the SSRP, the Fire Service Strategic Review, is still ongoing, but there was that undertaking of gathering that information and looking at things. So we're waiting on results back and going forward as to how things, what the recommendations from these this communication from all within the community has been. So that's something that is ongoing. So there is something in place there just now. And yes, for any new houses, as I say, it's not so much the quantity, but it's certainly the quality. But it's about getting that knowledge and information out there as to, is there a person that is maybe slightly more vulnerable in a higher risk category for getting in the door there to carry out that home fire safety visit. So it's about spreading that word and working with different partners to see if they're aware of that, which is what the new system is ideally going to do, if there is somebody there, so we can try and get in there and get that communication. So it's definitely based on a quality rather than quantity, but certainly if there is new areas and there's anything there, then that'll be something that will be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, if I can take Councillor Atkin next.
Thank you. Firstly, the unwanted fire alarms, congratulations on that policy success. I mean, just pragmatic and sensible, and it's obviously working really well. My point, I loved you when you're talking about the sharing of information. Sorry, the light seems to have gone off in this room, so I'm sitting in the dark. Because would that be, if you do a fire safety visit and you notice a huge number of vulnerabilities within a particular household that might not just be about fire, but they, often fires are started because people have other issues going on, leave a pan on or whatever. So would in that scenario, it be, you would say, just a tip to the housing or whatever, there's a lot of clutter and they're not looking after their property very well. It is a bit of a fire risk, but there might be other issues going on. You need to know, flag people up, basically. Does that, because I know that there used to be a kind of team of people addressing certain properties and people that were struggling. Does that happen? Is that what you mean by the sharing of information? So, as public services, you're basically it's a team effort to serve the public, isn't it, in whatever way? And my second point, talking about road traffic collisions, a bit of the same theme. You have to attend these, which must be quite, distressing. But a lot of it is about speed, and it's great you going into schools, but there used to be driving ambitions, didn't they? Programs about educating young people about, driving responsibly, etc. is that still a thing? And I know it's kind of not fire service, but it's still connected because you're part of the, part of the team that have to go and deal with some horrendous accidents and fatalities. And finally, I hope you had a really good time, whoever attended the James Braidwood service at St Giles on the 23rd. I mean, a lot of work and lobbying has gone in from one of my neighbours to declare an interest into raising the profile of the fire service through the founder. So great. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay. So home fire safety visits and the sharing of information, and it's to try and it's a two-way street. So 100% is something that we've been doing when we've been going into premises, and as much as we can offer that advice on fire safety matters, if we notice something else within there, then that we do have the appropriate channels to pass that information in the right direction to, if that person is maybe vulnerable or something that we see is not quite right, we can, we have the ability to share that information with our other partners, depending on who it may be. Excuse me. But it's something that we're trying to get more of as well, coming back the other way. So if, as an example, I know certainly the community action team, the local safety team have been involved in doing a lot of work with the caring groups. So they'll go out and give presentations to local carers who have got access into potentially people that maybe it's slightly higher at risk from fire. So if they're going into these premises and they're seeing, noticing what the indications could be that may put this person at slightly higher risk of fire, then can they share that information with us? And I think this is what the new system is trying to have a system that works so everyone can feed into it and everyone's aware, with the delicacies of GDPR, of course. But it's, having something in place and then also giving people that knowledge and that training so they can understand what the risks are and who's best placed to deal with it from ourselves point of view and our partners. So that's kind of that idea. The RTCs, certainly, yes. Quite a large number of RTCs and this year in this area and going across the Highlands as a whole. And it's frustrating to see and to try and help and narrow it down. And that's how we get involved. As you say, we've gone around all the schools within Highland now, and we'll continue to do that every year as the aim and the target to get a hold of that children just prior to that age of driving, just when they're coming into that sort of before they can get their license and get behind a wheel, to sort of demonstrate and show the what happens if things don't go well, and what the expectations of driving safely should be. So it's something that we've done, been round them all, and we will continue, because obviously it's a ever increasing population of people that are driving. There was the programme that you mentioned is not something I'm aware of right now, certainly, that we've been involved in, but the one through the summer that we have been involved with Police Scotland was the rider refinement. We talked about it before, but about the police in the past generally used Dingwall, but this year we've gone out and we've moved it to Fortrose, and we'd supplied the facilities and they'd given that information to bikers. But it's a course, so I think people pay for it. So it's the offering out of the police's facilities, and then individuals will pay for it, come along, and they'll get that instruction from a classroom scenario in terms of good practice, bad practice, and then also out on the road and getting that advice from that higher level of biking ability is something that's going on. But yes, it's stuff that we're continuing to look at. What else can we do? How else can we do it? There was an additional one on top of it I know we've been looked at for which we can deliver, and it's more kind of dealing with the scenario afterwards. But it seemed logical that the rider refinement would be followed by what happens if somebody does come off their bike. Then these individuals are going on this course. It's the prime scenario. There's looking at something called biker down. So it's more to deal with that care and that first aid side of things, and the trauma care of the individuals. If you can pass, specific for bike related instances, if you can pass that to these people that are coming on that, if they can help, if they're involved in a scenario. Unfortunately, it's got beyond the point at that time, but if they can help, then they can. So that's something that we're looking at and putting in place as a biker down programme. Braidwood, yes, I was there both in Fortrose earlier in the summer, and then I was down in Edinburgh a couple of weeks ago there, and brilliant. The amount of work that goes into both of them, certainly in the Fortrose has been going on for quite a while now, but Edinburgh was I was a bit blown away actually when I don't know what I was expecting, but it was really good, massively well organised, and the amount of interest that it is now generated that is aware of, and is great, and both the local crews from Cromarty and Fortrose, who have been involved for quite some time, also attended Edinburgh there a couple of weeks ago as well. So it was very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have to say it was a lovely service. So, and I think it's actually very poignant as well. So, now for the very first time, can I bring in Councillor Coghill to this committee?
Thanks for the opportunity, Chair. Thank you, Paul. An excellent report. I was particularly taken with the engagement with the pupils from the Invergordon Academy. It's obviously good recruits for the future, you would hope. No, it's good to see that school's engagement is brilliant. I've got a few daft laddie questions. The first time looking at one of your reports, so just I'm not sure what a deliberate primary or secondary fires are. I don't know what they might relate to. So if you can give us a wee example of what they might be. I was questioning the availability. I thought that was relating to the pumps or the equipment rather than the people. So I understand now. I think it's the people availability that's and the figures are excellent, as you say. And I wasn't entirely sure what a medium weight rescue pump was, but there was a picture of what I would call a fire engine. And there may be one in the same. I said it was daft laddie questions. And finally, the strategic review. I think a few people kind of wondered if that was opening a gateway to a cost-cutting exercise, and looked at that with some trepidation. So I wondered, do we have any indication of when that might be reporting, and what's your inside track on how that's looking? That's maybe unfair. Okay, thank you.
No problem. No such thing as a daft question. That's what I've always been told. Okay, so primary and secondary fire. So your primary is your bigger property, more potential for a more serious fire. That's what a primary is, whereas a secondary can be a smaller fire that's not, example I've been or something like that. Could be like a secondary, whereas a primary is a larger something that's got the potential to cause harm involving property is the gist of that, and the easiest explanation. The availability. So that is when the appliances are available to go out the door, if that is probably the best way of putting that. So there could be different examples, but it generally is a staffing thing that falls on, because obviously the stations that we're talking about are on call. They carry a pager. They have availability at a certain amount of hours, depending on which contract they're on, that they have to give on a weekly basis. But obviously, there's also a safe queuing model for a fire appliance, which, to put in plain and simple terms, if there's less than 4 people, then an appliance can't go out the door because it doesn't have the minimum crewing level. And that's without talking about individual skills. As I'm sure you can imagine, you need to have a driver, you need to have somebody who's qualified to do X, Y, Z. There's various different things, so that you could go into a bit more detail. So it falls down to, do you have that amount of people available, and are they appropriately skilled? And that's generally what the availability falls into place there. The medium weight appliance. So it's different terminology, I suppose. Is they've taken these. This is a new spec of appliance in that is slightly smaller than what you would maybe call a standard fire appliance, a standard pump. You can see the photo of it there, so it's not small by any means. It's just a little bit smaller, maybe to meet certain areas of the Highlands where the roads are maybe not quite so grand as you may have in the centre of a big city, that there's larger roads that fire appliances get about. Sometimes it can be quite snug on single track roads, and having this appliances that come in, they may be able to get to places a little bit better. These appliances come fully kitted out with all, so it's not a case of it's just the appliance, it's the appliance and all the equipment that comes with it is all brand new and of the latest spec technology, certainly additional things that maybe other appliances don't have. It's not everything needs the same. So that's hopefully explains what the medium weight appliance is. SSRP, so yes, I can't give you any answers on what any outcomes yet, because I don't know. So it's still ongoing, and we're awaiting back to hear on recommended guidance and things that have been looked at, including the risk areas, the availability of crews, probably, and I said this earlier on, the work that goes on to get these availability numbers are really, really, really good, and there's a lot of other areas that don't have these availability numbers, which means that there'll always be a fire appliance working, that just it will be the closest fire appliance, that's what it is. But when you look at certainly Invergordon, I'll not pick them at 0.03%, so they're available all the time, which is brilliant, So, but all these things are getting looked at, and it's quite reassuring. The conversations that have been had, it's not just about cuts, it's going, are the appropriate resources in the correct place to meet the demands, and is there an area that's at higher risk that doesn't have something? Are the stations in the right place? Is the equipment in the right place? It's all things that are being looked at, and to make sure it's fit for purpose, not just now, but in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. So you don't want to have to come back and do something similar again. So it's is there a better operating model? Is there a different system that may make this work better? So it's all these things. It's not just a case of there's that somebody, and I've certainly spoken to a few people as the example of worrying is, is it just going to be about cuts? So no, it's about looking and going, are things in the right place? How can we improve it? What can we do better? Is the equipment there? Are the people there? All these questions are being looked at, and it's going to come out shortly to see what recommendations, and have a look at these things again before it gets pushed forward. So it's ongoing, and hopefully we'll hear back in the new year with further results on where we're going and how things are progressing.
Thanks very much, Paul. That's a really comprehensive response and really helpful. So look forward to hearing what happens in the new year. Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have any further questions? Oh, well, then it only remains for me to say thank you so much, Paul, for everything that's gone into the report and everything that the fire service do for us locally. So thank you very much for everything this morning.
Okay, thank you all. Have a nice day.
Okay, so we are now moving on to item number 4, which is the housing performance report. So I believe we've got Aidan with us today to introduce the report.
Hi there, it's 2 seconds. Yes. Hello, members. I'll be reporting on what you will have noticed is a new committee report document. It's been agreed with Housing that in Q2 and Q4, Housing will provide an update to members, and in Q1 and Q3, Building Maintenance will provide their update rather than us doing the update at the same time. The new reports provide more information to enable you to do greater scrutiny on our performance and facilitate more discussion amongst yourselves between us. The decision on what new information to provide on the Housing Management Performance Report was based on common inquiries that we have received from members across all the committee areas across Highland. So starting from table 1, that shows that rent arrears is less than what stood at Q2 this time last year. The reasons for this fall are the removal of the eviction restrictions found in the Cost of Living Act, which enables us to take tenancy enforcement action when arrears is less than £2,225, which we have seen as an effective way to encourage tenant engagement and avoid having to take any court action. We've also been assisting tenants with bankruptcy by signposting them to citizen advice and continuing positive engagement, and also tenancies ending through eviction, abandonment, or tenants simply giving up their tenancies. And if they're in arrears, then arrears is no longer on our report for our current rent arrears. While it's not yet on the report, across Highland, area teams have started to see a spike in arrears on account of the large scale universal credit migration from people moving on from the legacy benefits onto universal credit, and this has had an unfortunate effect of increasing arrears in some circumstances, but that's kind of started in this quarter, so we would only see it in Q4 when it comes to this committee next. Table 2, this highlights the gross amount of rent arrear that is due. This does not just include current rent arrears, but it also includes former rent arrears and rent that has been written off, such as in cases of bankruptcy. This gives a true reflection of the total revenue which the service has not collected. You'll notice that the Black Isle is significantly lower than Ward 6 and 7 and for the Highland average, but the figures for both Ward 6 and 7 are lower than they were last year. Table 3, that shows us the total value and number of tenants in each of the arrear bandings. The most significant figure here are in the Cromarty Firth, which are much higher than the other areas. A possible reason for this may be just that there is a higher than average number of tenants in the ward who receive universal credit, for example, and due to the way this benefit operates, it can result in tenants falling into arrears before we can help stabilise and reduce their rent arrears. In Table 4, it highlights what tenancy enforcement action we have taken. I know members have asked for a separate discussion on our arrears pathway at a business meeting, so I'll avoid going into too much details here. But in short, a notice of proceeding, that is a legal document that we give to a tenant in the form of a letter to inform them that due to the size of their arrears, that we intend to take court action against them if they do not start to address their arrears. As you can see, while we have issued a much higher level of these documents in Q2 compared to last year in Q2, we have not gone to court at an equally significant level as compared to the previous quarter. This reflects that most tenants do engage with us when they receive a notice of proceeding, and that as a service we see court action and eviction as the last result, and we seek to do positive engagement through frequent contact, housing support referrals, reverse citizen advice or welfare support after we do a notice of proceeding, to avoid having to escalate it to court action. Another reason why there is a kind of difference between Q2 last year and Q2 this year is that when the Cost of Living Act was in place prior to its expiry in the 1st of April, we couldn't actually issue a notice of proceeding until someone's arrears was above £2,250. We now have the right to issue a notice of proceeding at any rent arrears level, though we do wait until someone has high rent arrears rather than issuing it when they only have, let's say, £100 or £200. Table 5 outlines our ASB work, antisocial behaviour work. You'll note that only 58% of ASB cases have been resolved so far this year. This number reflects the complexities of ASB cases. Some cases that are recorded could be, for example, someone complaining about loud music from a neighbour. We go investigate, speak to the neighbour in question. There's no repeat offence of loud music, and then after 28 days we would then close that ASB case. So that's an example of a simple one that we can open and close during the reporting year quite quickly. But as you'll know, members, that some ASB cases go on for much longer because of the complexities involved that require multi-agency work involving police, social work, housing support, etc. So these will likely not be closed within the space of a quarter, for example, like the first example I gave. We do expect, like last year, to see our numbers of closed cases grow as a percentage to all cases as the year comes to an end, as we are able to then close a number of complex ASB cases. But as noted, some ASB cases will simply take more than a year to resolve because of the complexity of it all. And then there's also times when an ASB case may be opened at the end of Q4, so we just don't have enough time to close it by the time of the new reporting year. Table 6 shows a recent uptick in homeless presentations in both Mid and East Ross. This is in part due to private sector landlords ending their tenancies following the end of the restrictions that were lifted in April. And also there's difficulties for households finding private sector housing to avoid having to go down the homeless route. Table 7 highlights the continuing trend of a reduction in time spent in temporary accommodation. This continual reduction is due to a strong focus on getting permanent outcomes for those who find themselves homeless. We've recently hired a new member of staff that covers both the Mid, East, Ross and Inverness area, whose role is to assist getting homeless households out of temporary accommodation and into permanent accommodation faster than we currently do. So this is focusing on homeless applicants who have received an offer of housing, and to try to get them into their permanent accommodation quicker than what they currently do after they've received that offer. This will allow new tenants to get into their home faster, which is good for them, and it means that we can get our temporary accommodation back quicker, so then we can then re-let it to homeless applicants faster as well. Table 8 shows the bedroom size demand within our homeless applicant population. You'll see that our 1-bedroom need population equals 78% of all homeless applicants. Due to the significance of this number and the fact that we actually don't have enough 1-bedroom stock to meet our 1-bedroom demand, we do often offer 2-bedroom properties to people who have a 1-bedroom need when they're homeless. If we didn't do that, we'd have a lot more homeless 1-bedroom need homeless applicants waiting to get rehoused. So we have to have this flexibility, pragmatic approach to this. But like the rest of the Highlands, 1-bedroom need in the 1-bedroom need homeless applicants is far outweighs the other 2, 3 and 4-bedroom homeless applicant population. Lastly, Table 9 highlights the allocation ratio between our 3 groups of housing applicants, which are transfer applicants, which are which are current HHR tenants or council tenants, Alban Cairn tenants who are looking to transfer into a new HHR tenancy. Non-homeless housing list applicants, so these are households who are living in the private sector, owner-occupiers, they live with friends, family, live with their parents, but they're not homeless and they're just looking to become a HHR tenant. And then the last one is homeless applicants, who are those who the Highland Council has found to have a homeless duty to, which includes finding a permanent home for them. We are focusing on rehousing homeless applicants, which has the benefit, as noted above, of reducing the time spent in temporary accommodation, and it also has had the benefit of us reducing the average time of a homeless application is live. So over the last year or two, we've been able to bring that number down below the Scottish Housing Network's average. So it's been a lot of good work from our teams across Highland in achieving that. But we do continue to rehouse non-homeless applicants as well from our lists when there's high unmet housing need, for example, or in some examples where we don't actually have a homeless applicant on the list for that particular property that's coming up for allocation. So that's the new and improved extended report completed for me. So if you have any questions on any of that, please feel free to ask.
First of all, Aidan, thank you. That is a really, really comprehensive report and actually very interesting in terms of a lot of trends across the area. So first of all, I'd like to thank yourself and Jake for all the work that's gone into that. I was interested in the rent arrears myself, and And I was just going to say that I take it when the service is looking at rent arrears that like it is a supportive environment, and I think you did cover that when you were talking to the report. And that I know you mentioned citizens' advice, but I was going to say I take it referrals are also made to the in-house welfare support team as well, in terms
Yeah.
of looking at maximising our tenants' income so that they have more ability to pay their rent. Is that, I take it that's the case, yeah.
Yeah, so we will usually offer for tenants a referral to the welfare support or for to citizen advice, whichever kind of one they want to do for that, but we do offer for both.
Because I was just going to say, I think the welfare support team do an amazing job of helping folk right across the Highlands maximise their incomes, and so yeah. So okay, I'd like to open up to members then. So Councillor Atkin was quick off the mark with her hand. So if we can,
I just want to say that for any committee, the housing team produce the best reports. They're just brilliant. I mean, they're so, honestly, warts and all, they're no messing about, tells us as it is. So this is another one of those. So thank you for that. Obviously, you know, on the rent, the arrears, the approach, as Councillor Johnson says, is compassionate. However, the figure always in the wider housing property committee, I mean, people look at that and they go, oh my God, we could do with that few million quid, because I mean, total it all up, it is a few million quid. So I've just got a question, and I know this is about resourcing, but obviously you've got to take action 6.11 on the highest arrears cases. But I asked this quite a lot actually on the committee. Sometimes you've got to nip it in the bud. You know, but this is again about resourcing. The people who've got themselves into a lot of trouble with their finances, maybe, you know, 100 or 200 quid, you know, kind of try and nip it in the bud. Is there a way of nipping it in the bud before people get out of control? And the second point is, I met a young gentleman who was really helped by an external organisation, because it wasn't just his rent, it was just he was massively in debt, with an app that has hugely helped him. So I don't know if we engage with that. And on the antisocial behaviour, this is another thing, you know, people feel that firstly, a lot of the time they don't bother reporting it because they think, what's the point? And second, they always think they feel that they're the victim and they're the person who doesn't get the support. And then obviously these things can escalate and become a much bigger issue than, like, a dog barking can become a kind of like a major thing for somebody that can't get any sleep. So do we profile the low level and high level complaints at all? Just to, I mean, that's difficult, isn't it? Because you can start with something and then it becomes a big deal. I don't know if there's any of that kind of data available, and whether we reach out to our tenants and say, are there things you don't bother complaining about because you don't feel that you are going to get, it is going to be dealt with? And that doesn't mean, obviously, you know, it's always complex, antisocial behaviour. It's always about relationships. So I think you've just got a really hard job on your hands. And I think everyone does their best. But there is that definite sense out there that, you know, victims feel that they're not taken into account as much as people, you know, smoking the drugs or making the noise late at night. So just thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, so in terms of early rent arrears work, we do look to engage with tenants as soon as possible, because it's much easier for them to deal with arrears and debt when it's smaller than a big number. So we have automated letters that get sent out. We also have housing assistants who are tasked to contact people before they get above £400 of rent arrears to see what's the reason their regular rent payments have changed. They've gone into benefits, have they lost work, etc. And then we try to support them in whatever we need to do in order for them to stabilise and start reducing their rent, etc. So we do that, but sometimes, unfortunately, people just either people do not engage, or there's system reasons around them trying to seek welfare that doesn't really go ahead as quickly, or sometimes people don't get paid straight away when they're in work, so it could be two months until they actually get their first paycheck. So, but we do try to engage as soon as possible so we can know what's going on, and we can then offer that assistance and have an understanding of what we need to do moving forward with them. We don't use, in terms of supporting people with their debts, etc. We also have the welfare support and citizen advice that we signpost to. We don't have any relationship with any app providers. I've not heard of an app service that can assist for that. So if there is a service like that and you know the name of it, so you can email it to myself, and we can I can explore that with the management team. We do have you may have seen it, a website called My Rents, I believe it's called, where if the tenant logs into it, they can see their whole rent profile for the last 12 months, see their payments and everything, and how much the rent is and everything like that. So it does give them the ability to see what's happening with the rent account, and it can actually help them maybe manage their money a bit better, because they can see how much they've put in, how much is due, what if they get partial universal credit, they can see how much universal credit has come in this month and know how much they have to top it up just to make up for that shortfall. So it can be handy for folk to look at the website just to see what's going on with their rents. And in terms of ASB, we do, where we receive a complaint and we log it as a ASB case, we have 3 categories, A, B, C, where I believe C are the most serious, ASB, B medium, and A is least serious. And then within those, they have the specific categories. So I think C, for example, drug dealing is one of them. Violence, kind of assault is in the C category, but then in the A category, I think dogs barking, I think is in the A category, for example. So we can get that data to say how many of our complaints that we've received are in A, B, C, and specifically why they're in that one. So we can get that data for it.
Thank you so much for that, Aidan. If I can take in Councillor McCallum next.
Thank you. You actually answered my question when you were answering some of Sarah's questions there, so thank you for that. But I just wanted to grab the opportunity to say thank you for the report, because it was really in-depth, it was really clear, and it was very much appreciated. So thank you for the work you put into that.
Fantastic. And then Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Aidan. Excellent report, very informative. And all I can say is a big thank you for all that you've been doing down in our neck of the woods at the moment. And I never appreciated how much goes into sorting some of the big issues out there. The different agencies that have to be brought in, especially on the ASBO type of issue. So thank you very much. The only other thing, on reading the report, you do notice that 1-bed properties are really in great demand. So I'm quite sure this does happen within the council, but it's maybe daft of me to say this, but do you pass that information on to the developers? You know, when develop plans for a housing scheme comes in, do the planners encourage developers to put in 1-bedroom housing as well? Because I'm quite sure some of the people that are in our 1-bedroom houses would rent private 1-bedroom housing as well, or maybe help to do that. So it's just a thought when I was looking at the papers. Thank you.
Yeah, so when a new development is coming in, they do come to the housing team to ask about what sort of properties we'd like. So we do outline that we have a huge 1-bed demand and ask for a lot of 1-beds. For that, and depending on the particular town or village, we'll also maybe add that we need particular 3-beds or 4-beds, etc., based on what our current demand looks like. But then the development team have their own metrics on kind of criteria they have to fill based on why and how they got the funding as well from the Scottish Government. So they development, I think, have to juggle between what we want from them and what kind of other requirements they get potentially from the Scottish Government, etc. But we do tell them we want 1 bedrooms anyway, and we do get them from time to time, but we also get a lot of 2 beds, which can be helpful in the sense that it future-proofs it. So if someone enters a relationship, has children, then that 2-bedroom is still suitably sized for them. So we do look for 2 bedrooms because it's a bit of a future-proof as well.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you very much, Aidan.
And if I could now bring in Councillor Dundas, please.
Yeah, thanks, Aidan. And just like Maureen there, thanks for all the work that's going on down in our housing scheme. It feels as if we're in touch with you on a daily basis at the moment with one thing or another. So thanks. My sort of query is what kind of relationship that we are actually building and creating with private landlords. I know that in my own community, there's 2 or 3 houses at the moment where private landlords are wanting to sell their properties. They're unable to, and the advice given to people that are living in them from the Highland Council is just to stay there until they can find alternative housing, which is causing private landlords a huge expense. They're having to go to solicitors to remove people from their homes. And I just feel that we're going to need private landlords coming up with our housing challenge. We want them to be able to rent their properties out, but I just feel that at the moment, a lot of people who are renting the house out privately to tenants are going to steer away from going down this route because there's such a difficulty that if they wish to have their homes back, that they just have to go through such a costly exercise to reclaim their homes back. And I just feel as if that there's maybe a breakdown now in relationship with the Highland Council and private landlords. We see it in the press so often now, and I just wondered how we could build these relationships back with the private landlords.
So in terms of the relationship with the private landlords, we have in the past had private landlords officers that have had communication and engagement with the private landlord associations, etc. But we don't currently have that position. I think it was partly funded through Shelter, so we don't have that position now. So we don't have I don't believe from our housing policy team we have a link up with the private sector as a collective body for that. So I think most of our dealings, especially at my level, the operational, is just dealing with them maybe in a 1-by-1 cases, depending on the particular instance that's happening with their tenant, etc. And with their tenant, and when a tenant does come to us saying that the landlord has issued notice to quit, etc., we do provide them with the full range of their housing rights, which includes that. Just like with social housing, a notice doesn't mean they have to leave. It is really until they get an eviction order in terms of the private sector that then they have to be compelled to leave. And during that time, we do try and work with the private sector tenants if they engage with us to see if we can find another private sector outcome for them. Or often because of some of the lower demand areas here in East Ross, we can try and find them a social housing outcome without having to go through the homeless route for them, as they get some additional points when they do have a valid notice to quit, for example.
Okay, thanks.
That's super. And the last hand up appears to be Councillor Coghill, so thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Aidan, excellent report, as everyone has commented. It's really helpful, eye-opening for me, particularly as I'm new on the block. There's clearly quite a lot within the Cromarty Firth ward to address. I was previously relatively unaware, and I think my inbox is just starting to fill up a little with bits and pieces about it now. So no doubt we will have a relationship going forward. So good to meet you, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks.
Yes, I think housing is one of the common common inquiries you get. So yes, good looking forward to working with you as well.
Oh, well, I think it just remains to be said, Aidan, thank you once again, not only for the report, but for your time today. And it's very much appreciated. And if you could pass our thanks on to the team, that would be great.
Will do. Thank you.
Super, thank you. Okay, so we are now moving on to item number 5. Which is utilising the Great British Insulation Scheme to tackle fuel poverty in Black Isle and Easter Ross area social housing. So we have Isla with us today. So it would be lovely to hear from you about this wonderful scheme.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members, and apologies for the mouthful that is the title of the paper. The paper is just providing a brief highlight overview of one of the opportunities available to the Council at the moment. So it provides some information on the Great British Insulation Scheme, which is referred to as GBIS. That's how we shorten it when we're delivering the projects. It's available to improve energy efficiency and supports the Council's ambition to tackle fuel poverty. This funding is available for council properties, but also private residents, whether they're privately owned or privately rented. Some background behind it, Energy Company Obligation, which again is abbreviated to eco-funding, which the GBIS scheme is part of, is an energy efficiency scheme for the whole of Britain. ECO places a legal obligation on energy suppliers to deliver energy efficiency measures to domestic properties, and its focus is on low-income households where there's maybe people with vulnerabilities through health conditions and groups which are classed as fuel poor. And it allows installation of insulation and heating measures. The aims of the eco-funding is to help alleviate fuel poverty and accelerate progress to meet the fuel poverty targets. It reduces carbon emissions, it promotes energy efficiency and encourages and supports innovation. The GBIS funding came in a little bit later than this iteration of eco-funding, but it has widened the pool, so it means that more people can be available for it. Its focus is on low-cost insulation measures, and they are detailed within the paper under section 5.1, where it talks about the primary and secondary measures. The availability of funds and what work can be undertaken will be dependent on the installer that is delivering the measures, because they have individual agreements with the energy suppliers. So some companies may be able to give you primary and secondary measures, others will only be able to give you a primary. So it will just depend on what those agreements are in place. The Climate Change and Energy team is also in discussions with contractors to look at how we can maximise the eco and GBIS funding for social properties, as well as the privately owned and privately rented tenants. And one of the areas that was flagged for us through our housing colleagues was Black Isle and Easter Ross, and with the whole of Ross and Cromarty really. So we have done some analysis of that based on the desktop information that's available to us, and that's outlined in section 6 in the paper. What I would say is this data does have limitations, and we are aware of that. So the data comes from the Housing Stock Report, but we also have access to the Home Analytics database, which is produced by Energy Savings Trust, and that is based on the Energy Performance Certificate data that is held. If a property doesn't have an Energy Performance Certificate, the database will model the data and those around about it. Now that's okay in places like Glasgow and Edinburgh. It doesn't work so well in Highland, because in a street we can have multiple construction types. So what we have found is that on the data there are incorrect construction types. So to combat that, we undertake the additional the desktop exercise initially. We then will do visual inspections. Now that can be through Google Maps, but also going out into the areas to have a look. So you just do an external walk round up and down the street to confirm what the construction types are there. What we've then done is initially we're looking at cavity wall insulation. So we can get a check ran through the guarantee agency or one of them to look for that. So we have done that for the properties. That has flagged a significant number which doesn't have a guarantee registered through SIGA. So then we would look to move those properties on to undertake drill tests. So that's an external drill that they do, and they scope the property. That's telling us whether the cavity is empty. or if it's been filled, and if it has been filled, what is in that property. So they have undertaken over 100 drill chests within the area. Now, a significant number of those properties are showing as being filled. So we are then using this as an exercise to report back and update the data that we hold. So we're working closely with our housing colleagues to do that. So I think for me, it's a kind of two-pronged exercise for us on the social properties with GBIS funding. We've got money that's available to us to undertake the low-cost insulation measures, but also we're going to be doing a bit of a data validation exercise alongside that. So it's kind of that two-pronged approach. I think one of the other points that was raised earlier in what Aidan was talking about is where you've got arrears. There's arrears on your council tax as well. It goes along a number of things within the council. And I think it wouldn't be a stretch to say that people in arrears are likely to be in fuel poverty and would benefit from the funding that could be delivered under this scheme. And what would be important for us, I think, is to establish a strong link with the welfare support team so that they have this on their radar, that when they go out to speak to residents, whether that be tenants or if it's somebody in the private sector, they know that there's support out there that's available to them. And insulating the property will improve its efficiency, but it'll also reduce the heating demand, which I think will help given the cuts to the winter fuel payments. That's kind of all I was going to say on the paper, and I thought it might be better to open that up because I'm sure there may be questions for that.
Thank you, Isla. I think this is a really, really exciting opportunity for the area. So thank you so much for bringing this report and coming along today to talk about it. I'm really, really delighted that the Black Isle and Easter Ross area is identified as a priority for this. I think given how coastal every single one of our wards is, and given the impact that we get when weather comes in from the east, I think I have to say I'm delighted. And I'm really, really encouraged by the idea of this joined up thinking with the welfare support team, given that these improvements will have the biggest impact for some of our residents with perhaps some of the most financially challenging situations. So yeah, I think this is a fantastic opportunity and definitely one to be grabbed with both hands. I'll open it up for a bit of discussion then. So Councillor Coghill, you were first off the mark.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Isla, for an excellent report. I can certainly see huge opportunities. As ever, and this will become a common theme, I've got a number of daft laddie questions. So I can see from your report is it 108 that's cavity wall insulation, and that seems to be the target of the interventions that that this fund is seeking to address. I wasn't at all sure what all the other categories were, some of which, well, I figured out the solar PV one with a 901, but yeah, the rest, no clue. So if you can help me out with that, that'd be great.
Of course. Apologies, Councillor Sinclair. One of the things I would say is we're terrible for acronyms and we try and knock them out of it, but everything is. So on that figure 1, IWI is internal wall insulation. EWI is external wall insulation. So that's going to be mostly your solid properties. Your CWI is your cavity wall insulation. LI is loft insulation. Your solid and your suspended relates to floor insulation. Air source heat pump is ASHP, and then you got solar PV at the back end of it. They're quite long names, and apologies that is not being missed off. Normally it goes alongside the primary measures, we would have had it in brackets, so I do apologise for that. The scheme, as you've quite rightly picked up, is focusing on the cavity wall insulation. One of the reasons for that was we can get the measure fully funded. There is a management cost that goes alongside that. So we thought it would be a good one. We could get it up and running and moving pretty quickly. We have found the data limitations that have come into that, obviously, so we're kind of addressing them and moving through, but it still will be a relatively quick install. We can do that in half a day. It has an impact for the householders as well. the funding, though, we are in discussions, and I can't say more, I'm afraid, really beyond that, to expand what we can do, so it goes beyond the primary measures that are outlined, which are insulation, and we could be looking at some of the solar aspects there as well. So that's quite exciting for us, and when we have got that in a place that we can bring back, we'd be more than happy to provide an update to committee there.
Thanks very much, Sheila. Apologies for my lack of knowledge. No, that's. I'm delighted to hear that you're looking at not just the single measure, but where there's opportunities to bring in other elements to further reduce costs to our tenants and private sector as well. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. And next to bring in is Councillor Ross.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Isla, for this. Just if I was pointing somebody within the private sector to get in touch with somebody about maybe getting some of these measures put in place, what's the process? Do we contact the council, or is it Home Energy Scotland, or what do we do?
So we've got 2 email addresses within the team. We've got one that is specifically for the private householders, and we've got one that the council tenants can use as well. It's easier to run it as 2 separate ones because they'll say that I'm in a rented property, and we have to kind of go through and establish the ownership of that. And we also have a pre-qualification form. So if they email in, is the short answer, we can then pass them the details, and they can complete a Microsoft form which will tell us whether or not they meet the eligibility for the funding on an initial basis. So I can get those details shared out later today.
That would be lovely. Thanks, Isla. Thank you.
And Councillor Atkin.
Sorry, I think Isla, firstly, as usual, brilliant, fantastic paper and really exciting. I just had a point, Councillor Johnston, that we're getting such good discussions on these papers that we haven't moved the recommendations. So I'll move the recommendations for this paper. It's because we all get on so well, isn't it? But also, my question has been answered. How can we help signpost people to this opportunity? Not just council, the social housing, but also I mean, my brain's already going with historically people getting in touch with me from, I'll dig out the old emails and get in touch and ask them. So that would be fantastic to have the information that we can publicise through our community councils and through individuals we've met. Brilliant. And the video was great, by the way, as well. No, it's really, honestly, that's a great form of communication for people to just see. It's snappy, it's short, you know, nip in while you just made a cup of tea. I mean, it's that kind of communication is really effective for communities, I think. So well done on the team, on the comms team for that.
Could I just add in, if that's okay, to that point? We're actually, as the because we've delivered the private projects as well as we're doing some of the work for the social, and we have funding there that allows us to do the likes of the video. We are creating shorter information ones on the different measures, so that will be available to people by the end of this financial year. So they will see if it's cavity wall insulation, what that process looks like, if it's an air source heat pump, if it's solar PV. So it's kind of a step-by-step videos that we're going to have off the back of that, and that could be used for both the privates and the council, so just to inform them a bit more.
So we need to second the recommendations, by the way. Yeah.
Okay, next up is Councillor McCallum.
Thank you. I was going to say, Sarah, I second your proposal. And I just wanted to thank you as well for this report. I think it is really exciting. I'm delighted that we are the sort of first area to kind of benefit from it. When I read the report, I was talking to a few different people about it afterwards, just to kind of get their view on it. And there was a undercurrent belief that it was only really targeted for people who are on benefits. So I just wanted to ask if that was the case, because I know a lot of people then went off with great excitement to fill out the form. They said they couldn't get it, and they kind of thought it's only because they were on benefit, or they weren't on benefits. Sorry. So I just wanted a bit more clarification on that, if I could.
Absolutely. So for any apologies to those at the Climate Change Committee and hear me talking about this before, but The funding is, there's so many different eligibility criteria for the different funding routes that's very confusing for people. It's confusing for people that do understand it. So what we would always do is encourage people just to get in touch, and then we can do that side of it for them. There is a benefit route specifically under the eco funding, so they call that the DWP route. So they do the check for eligible benefits there. That is just one part of the eco funding scheme that we've got. The other is looking at your SAP ratings. It's still focused on those that have got the lower income, but you've also got people that have got health conditions. So if you've got somebody with breathing issues or heart conditions, they can get a letter from their GP, and they would sign it off that way. So that does open the eligibility. We do have a flow chart which takes you through the eco funding, but also the Energy Efficient Scotland area based scheme, which is for private householders, to try and map it out for people. It has been updated at the moment, but can certainly pass that on. But I would strongly recommend that if anybody is interested in this funding, just to get in touch with us so that we can see what's happening. Another thing to note is so far, so we've finished 2 quarters of 24-25, and eco and GBIS funding for the private properties is 1.3 million so far for the region.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that.
Still on mute there. So thank you very much, Isla. Not only am I delighted with the report and the contents of it, I'm delighted that GBIS is a much shorter name. So given everything we've just said, are we happy to note the contents of the report and agree to support the development of externally funded projects and the opportunity to scale up?
Agreed.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Isla.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we are now moving on to item number 6. Now you'll have seen from the agenda and the papers that this is an update on the introduction of the waste management, which is probably better known as the new wheelie bins across the area. So is everybody happy to note that? I don't believe we have anybody to speak to it. Lovely. Oh, Councillor Coghill, did you have a contribution you wish to make?
No, I was given a visual thumbs up
Lovely.
to your proposal.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Atkin.
Obviously, we'll share, you know, some impressive stats in here. You know, on the curbside waste and the uptake, etc. So I think we need, when we've got good stuff to say and work's going on that's working, it's quite important that we let people know through our socials and our community councils that they probably, I mean, obviously I have to say in my ward, you know, Cromarty feels a little bit left out of, and we've got an issue there, but that's just a ward issue. I'll keep banging on about to the team. But generally, they've worked incredibly hard to get this going and implemented, and it's been quite a challenge. And I think it, you know, will continue to be a challenge. But you know, they're getting there, aren't they? And as you say, as usual, the information is quite clear that we've got, so that's good. I wish they were there so we could say thank you.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. I just think that the scale of rollout of that number of bins has been a massive piece of work for everybody involved. But I do think it is incredibly welcome, the improvements it's made for recycling in the area. So I think it's just worth passing on our thanks to the team. So we are now moving on to item number 7, which is about play park funding. And I'm pretty sure we had John Mackay with us this morning. And this is about the homologation of money for Chapel Street Play Park in Portmahomack. So welcome, John.
I thank you, Chair, and still morning. Good morning, members. Yeah, we had discussions with the Tain members earlier in the year to get some equipment into the play area in Chapel Street in Port Mahomet, and we did install the equipment. It's on site now, and it was just a case of bringing this to committee to ask for to request you homologate the spend of this money. That's all I have. So any questions?
Lovely. So do we have any questions at all, or are we happy to note and homologate the spend?
Yeah. Yep. Quite happy.
Yeah, quite happy.
Fantastic.
I'll not say the knock shorty word, John.
I shall make no comment.
Fantastic. I think play parks is one of the lovely fun things that we get to be involved with as councillors, so lovely to see any improvement to a play park. So thank you very much, John, for your time and your work.
Okay, thank you, members.
Super.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye now.
So we are now moving on to Common Good Funds, and I believe we've got Lynn with us today to go over the 4 Common Good reports.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be taking the first 2, A and B. So the first one, good morning, members. Thank you. So the Cromarty Common Good Fund members, you'll be very familiar with the quarterly monitoring, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have on the Cromarty one. Thank you.
I don't think there was any surprises in there, but Councillor Atkin.
I know I should have asked and I will ask at the next community council meeting, or if there has been anything about the East Hall, any progress on that, because I know a community group were interested in a possible cap, and it is common good. I don't know if this not probably not the appropriate forum, is it, to ask this question? We'll ask. Helen might know. Yeah, I thought while I'm here, I might as well ask.
I don't know the specifics about that, so I think we can follow it up. But obviously, if they have put in a CAT report, there's we'll follow the process, and there would be obviously some extra work in terms of it being common good, because there'd be additional approvals needed.
Quite.
But obviously, we would follow the process, and yeah. I think with Lynn being new in, and it hadn't started when I was covering the common good, we probably.
Well, I don't think it's. I think I just wondered what was happening with the building and everything, because obviously it's kind of empty, isn't it? And it's High Life Highland now, and it's it's a waste. It's an asset. It's kind of not going to get in better condition if it's left.
Yeah, it's quite challenging, isn't it, when
the
buildings are empty, and you don't want groups to take them on unless actually they have the need and the resources. But I mean, I'm sure Lynn, you'll pick that up, won't you, and come back with some more detail.
Yeah.
Maybe a note to the a business meeting. Would that be helpful?
I'll try and chase it up with the community as well. I'll be on my list for the next meeting. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, and I will certainly follow up, as Helen says. Thank you, Councillor Atkin. Thank you, Helen.
Okay, so I think we're all quite happy with the Cromarty Common Good. So if we can move on to the Fortrose Common Good now. I think the only real point of interest was the spend towards the coastal erosion. But other than that, I think it's no surprises again. Are we all quite happy to note that one, or is there any questions regarding it? Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now moving on to the Invergordon Common Good Fund. So, Helen.
Thank you, members. This is also basically a very simple, straightforward report. Obviously, Q2, we don't have the rentum for the town hall this year, but it's been invoiced, so that will be showing next time round. And the staff costs come through later in the year. And in terms of property costs, obviously that's not aimed at anything specific. It's just if costs should come up through the year. So certainly nothing has yet. And in a sense, probably the most significant stage for this next common good isn't part of the monitoring report really, but obviously the Bouchardon bus, that case is actually going to call in court, which will be an online hearing at the end of this week on 7th of November. And obviously there's a process to go through after that as well. But that's probably the main piece of action in relation to this common good at the moment.
It's very interesting that it'll be online. I think if members for the public were wanting to watch, that's very interesting, isn't it?
Indeed.
So do any members have any comments, queries, or anything else on the Invergordon Common Good Fund? Councillor Coghill.
Thanks, Councillor Johnston. I'll get used to the terminology. I think it's the first time I've given you your proper title today. Yeah, certainly I'm aware of particularly around the Bucharon bust. There was some disquiet within parts of the communities about, not necessarily opposed to the sale, but about the process, or how it was, the consultation was carried out, and there were some difficult, people found some of that quite difficult, including the quality of the paper that supported that. But that's by now, and it's off to court on Friday. So I think there's still should be probably recorded that the community would like to have a voice in how that common good fund is used. I think it's commonly done through this committee or more locally. But yeah, I think it would be helpful if the community, through the community councils, could have a voice as to how the resources are used going forward. So I thought I'd just say that and see how that lands.
I think, Helen, I think you've got your hand up at a very opportune moment there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm picking up on Sinclair's point. I think it's perhaps worth just reiterating, as previous reports have done, that obviously the consultation was carried out in the way that complies with the legislation, because there is, with the common good, there's very specific legislation about. So obviously we have to follow that process. And obviously in terms of assuming we do get the go ahead on the 7th of November and the whole thing goes ahead, then clearly there will have to be a piece of work done around what happens next, and there undoubtedly would be community involvement in terms of priorities. And I'm sure that some of the work that other colleagues have been doing supporting place planning work, that's obviously very much about working with the community and capturing priorities. So I mean, we don't have a roadmap, I don't think, that far ahead, but those kind of things obviously have been, that community engagement's been going on really for quite some time, and there's some significant detail, and inevitably will be really, really useful in terms of identifying what the priorities were if and when we get to that state.
Thank you very much, Helen. And it's next over at Councillor Loudon. Be lovely to hear from you.
Hi. Yeah, Sinclair, just in terms of the sort of the record of this in Tain, what the legislation says is that the council has to have has to take into account the views of the community in terms of what it's doing. So it has to take account of what's in the best interests of the community. In Tain, it's always been the case that the community council are involved in that process. So if bids come in to spend any of the money in the common good, then it does go to, in our case, a single community council. Would be more difficult, I think, in Invergordon's case, but the community council in Tain always is a concern. And I think just in the other issue is, I think there is there would be a sort of a discretionary amount up to which I think officers would maybe have authority to spend as well. So I think all of that's for the future. Let's see what the courts decide first. But it is one where there is a track record of there being community consultation in Tain, and certainly in terms of discussion with the community council before the decisions are made as to how the money gets spent.
That's really helpful, Councillor Loudon, to hear about other people's experiences. Certainly, there's quite a lot of let me say sensitivity around how common good funds are utilised within the town. You know, that's local history. Anyway, we'll not open that particular can of worms at the minute. But yeah, no, it's good that there's a model there, and I'm quite sure that the two community councils involved will be eager to work together in tandem on this. I know the folks, they're good.
Councillor Atkin, are you?
I'm just recalling when we had the discussion about the bust, it was sold that this money, the interest of which will be entirely for the benefit of the community. That was the pitch. So, you know, Sinclair, you obviously weren't around then, but that was the pitch. That the interest is substantial on this amount of money for the town of Invergordon. So, and this is on camera, so I'm saying it again. This was what was said on camera. So just to reassure you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had no doubt. That it will be subject to proper scrutiny. Just helpful to know that the community is watching with extreme interest.
Helen, if I can bring you back.
Yeah, I was just going to add that reminder that members are familiar with from previous common good reports is obviously the nature of the common good is that it's based on the former borough, and that is where, you know, the benefit has to go to. And obviously in terms of you know, as I can't remember which of the members said, the interest on the revenue balance of a sum that might be obtained through sale would be significant. And obviously, as I say, there would be a variety of ways of getting views in, and then obviously we always have our scheme of delegation that you know, members can set sums aside at a committee, and then below that there can be sums, you know, under 10,000 is normally officer decision, but in consultation with members, for example, like the ward budget. So there's models there, and the scheme of delegation supports those different levels of decision making, and the nature of the common good is about the benefit for that borough.
Lovely, thank you for that clarification, Helen. That's really useful. If we're all happy to note the Invergordon one, are we all happy to move on to Tain? So again, I don't think there's any surprises in the Tain one, is there?
I don't think so, and nothing significant to pick up on. I mean, it's all business as usual, really, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Dundas.
Yeah, I was just coming back, and actually I was emailing Helen last night about it. We're trying to, the Tain initiative at the moment, are in talks with Glenmorangie to ensure we can get the pathway from Glenmorangie into Tain on the go and built. Glenmorangie have indicated that they would like to pass the path over to the community, and it was really, we're trying to find a suitable group that would take that on so that it'll be there for legacy, really. So Derek was helping me with this as well. How do we do that? Who's the contact, and how do we get a representation from the common good, or who is the representation that we would require to help us with that?
well, normally it would be Phil Tomlin. Actually, it would normally be Phil doing these reports, but he's away on leave at the moment, so he'd be the local contact for the common good. And I mean, I know discussions for the path have been sort of in the offing for quite a long time, haven't they? So it's really good if that comes forward. And then obviously, again, if there's a substantial change, sometimes you have to undergo additional and very specific processes for common good. If that's necessary, then that's what we'll do. It might not be necessary depending on the type of usage, but Phil would be the key contact, and he, I have to say, is very experienced on common goods as well. And mainly, and Fiona might well be supporting in terms of the kind of place planning, that kind of community aspect. And if there are common good steps that have to be taken, then obviously we'll just advise. And sometimes it takes longer, but there are always steps that can be managed.
Okay, that's useful, Helen. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Loudon.
Yep. Yeah, I've just at the last meeting of the Tain Community Council, there was a bit of a question just in terms of, I mean, there were very small amounts that used to come out each year. One for the old folks party, and the other for Christmas lights and sort of how they were stored. And I think we used to make applications, and I think it was to the Common Good Fund for that. There does appear to be a sort of a position at the moment where there's a bit more money coming in than going out from the looks of things. I think if even there's more money coming in, I think, from interest than was the case in the past. So I'm just wondering, would they be right in thinking that they might be able to put in applications for those two things again?
Can I respond to that, Chair? Yeah, I do remember the days when I was first working in the Tain area. There was quite a substantial grants budget, and in fact, I mean, I think it gave a really significant grant towards Christmas lights one year that I remember. But obviously, we haven't had the kind of muscle income, as you know, Councillor Loudon, for quite some time now. So no grants budget has been set. So this year there isn't, and there hasn't been for certainly a number of years. There has not been a community grants budget set, so it wouldn't be appropriate at the moment. But obviously, if, as you're saying, looking at it, the feeling is there's sufficient income coming in, and enough money in the reserves to deal with anything unexpected, which of course when you have property you always have to allow for, then obviously it would be up to members to decide if they wish to set a small budget for the next financial year, and that's something that could be considered, and it would be a member decision, of course, but with an officer recommendation.
Thanks for that. I think it's more in regard to the sort of ongoing saga with Blarlaith, and there are significant charges being made by the council for administering the fund, which amount to about half the income of the fund in a normal year. But we've never been able to get any work done on Blarlaith in terms of is it a common good asset, and the officer, I understand now, is I think on a path to retirement. I don't know. I think it's appropriate to challenge the money that's been taken without anything being sort of visible in terms of, I first asked these questions 7 or 8 years ago. I think it would be good to see some progress being made on whether Blarlaith is a common good asset or a Highland Council asset.
On the more general point, Councillor.
Yeah.
Johnson. Yeah, there obviously for the likes of myself, where common good is kind of a core part of what I do. If I spend time in the common good, and I obviously have spent significant time sometimes over the years, depending on what's up at the time, then my salary is not charged to it because it's just a core part of my job. But we have, as you know, the common good officer, and she will be retiring, and there is a replacement coming into place. Their salaries are only funded through the charges, and so their hours have to be charged to whichever common good they're working on. So obviously when the officer was doing quite a lot of work at the beginning in terms of looking, there's a bigger charge, and other times the charge will be elsewhere, but that is how that post has been funded. And there are other services like property where obviously that's the way that is set up. I'm aware, and I'm not going to answer in detail on the Blair Lathe because it isn't my area of expertise, and so I know the debate that you're referring to, but I wouldn't want to put myself out there with a decision. But as I recall, I mean, Zara did some work on it, and she found out some information, and I think there was a charge was shifted or a payment shifted to the common good, if I remember rightly. And I know there's more work that you've requested. At the moment, she's simply working on other common goods because obviously she's a limited resource, and obviously we do have to manage within, and every common good likes the officer's time to look at theirs to try and make sure that they're getting some. I mean, that will not be forgotten, but obviously we have one officer dealing with the common goods, and the time is limited. It's within the time that they have. So that's not the answer you're looking for, Derek, but sorry, Councillor Loudon, but I know it'll be on the list. It's not forgotten. It's just not, I know, happening as quickly as I know you would like it to be.
Oh, well, listen, thank you very much to both yourself, Helen and Lynn, for talking to the Common Good reports and explaining things to us. And I'd like to thank all the officers for the work that they put into maintaining the Common Good. So thank you very much. I take it we're all happy to note all those 4 reports and continue on to the next item. Okay.
Great.
So the next item is the ward discretionary awards that have been made. So again, it's in your papers and really just an item for noting, as we should all know what's been happening in our own wards. So are we all happy to note that items? Fantastic. And then the last thing today, which seems to have come around very quickly, is noting the minutes of the meeting that we had on the 5th of August. So is everybody happy to note those minutes? Lovely. Well, listen, thank you all so much for your time today. Really appreciate all the work that we all put in right across our community. So thank you very much, and take care, and we'll see you all soon.